Good morning, Mestre Sukuri coming to you from Tokyo, Japan. I have nothing to say, but I feel fantastic. Yesterday was probably our 16th or 17th haunted house here at Capoeira Zoador Academy. And a special thanks to everybody here on Patreon because I used some of the budget for the haunted house. And before that, well, since the beginning of Capoeira Zoador Academy here in 2003, we've always had not haunted house, but we did have like Halloween parties and invited parents to come in and to get involved and, to create a community. And I want to talk a little bit about the importance of planting the seed of community and culture. So when I started doing this years ago, because I have a background in culture and in study and cultural anthropology, I've always known the importance of cross-cultural education. Now, cross-cultural education doesn't just mean going to school and studying. It also means being exposed to things from an early age, especially for children, so they can see the beauty and the dynamic and variations in their day-to-day lives. For example, I've told this story before. My son, Dede, he's 16, he'll be 17 on Christmas, but he just got back from Africa. And way before that, when he was in junior high, he used to always remark, wow, Dad, most of my friends, except for the one foreigner that they've talked to or interacted with in junior high for the English class, they never talk to foreigners, they're never around. So we were just talking about this last year, right? There's very few non-Chinese descent, non-Korean, non-Vietnamese, non-Asians in Japan, actually. So when to see a foreigner and to interact with a foreigner who's not of Asian descent, it's very rare. And I say that it's different because a lot of times Japanese will look down upon other Asian races, just as other Asian races will look down upon Japanese. I mean, it's just something that's been going on here for thousands of years in Asia. They look down on each other, and that's their choice, right? I'm not going to get into that right now. But what I do see a lot of is sometimes, years ago, I'd be in a situation where it's like one or two foreigners in the academia, and they'd be like 10, I'm sorry guys, they're doing construction again. Like 10, 15 Japanese, and the Japanese say, wow, there's so many foreigners, but like not in the way there's so many foreigners such as there's a lot, but more like there's just like shockingly surprised, wow, we're being invaded kind of feeling. And it's just a natural reaction when you come from a very xenophobic and very, unicultural, which even that is a facetious, remark to make, because Japan is actually very diverse. It's just modern, contemporary Japanese culture that says they're just one big, Japanese ethnic entity. So when one of the reasons I love doing this is now after the result of teaching capoeira here for 20 years, and I'm sure a lot of like capoeira teachers, Brazilian teachers who've been doing cultural events and whatnot in the United States or Europe or whatever outside of Brazil can see how those opportunities to cultural access, to cultural understanding, to cultural events are so important. And that takes me back to this whole haunted house project. One of the reasons is I kept doing this is because even though like yesterday people asked me how long did it take to set up. If it would have been me by myself and I didn't have Contramestre Jacare helping me on Friday and my wife yesterday, before we had to do everything, I would say it would have taken about 10 hours to set up and about maybe 2 hours to take down because it takes a lot more time to set up. So I came in this morning to clean up because actually the cleanups, there's still a lot. I got to put all the costumes away and I got to do all this stuff. And I put up a video yesterday about all the things that I was able to do with the support of all of you guys from Patreon here. So big thanks to everybody for helping to make this an amazing Halloween. Back to point. I've had students who were kids when they were 7, 8, 9, 4, 5, 6, and now they're grown adults. For example, I have students who are 27, 28, 25 now. They're not my students now, but they did capoeira with me for during their formative years, at least from like elementary school. And when I tell them, I'm doing the haunted house, if I run into someone, they're like, wow, that's fantastic. We used to love that. It used to be so scary. But they all say the same thing, that they're always like, wow, we had so much access to see these kind of things. And growing up here in Japan, they're like, well, none of my friends ever had that opportunity. None of my friends ever had an opportunity to be around foreigners or to just be around, like on a Saturday or on a Sunday or at an event. There'd be so many foreigners here that the kids grow up with foreigners not being like something mysterious or something really, or something to hate or something to push aside, but something to really see, it's part of everyday life. And that's something that's very, very rare and very lucky, I think, here in Japan. Most of the cultural arts, like I said, most of the cultural arts that are non-Asian are usually done by Japanese, including capoeira, hula dance. It's a huge thing here. Hula dance in Japan is big. And generally, it's Japanese teachers. And it's nothing wrong with that, but giving the kids a chance to be exposed to the international community, to be exposed to foreigners and whatnot, is such an important thing to do. So when we talk about cultural, right, like exposure, we're also talking about, like, for example, one thing that we see a lot here in Japan is also the negative side of cultural exposure, right? Japanese many times will throw trash and not take care of the trash properly. And you'll see, like in the news, or you'll see signs, especially like in the countryside from the last 20 years, that a lot of foreigners are throwing away their trash in an un-Japanese way. And I find that funny, because for the amount of trash they're saying that foreigners are doing, I mean, it's impossible. Just from what people say, hearsay is like all the trash in Japan that's untidy is foreigners. So that means that like we're more like 90% of the population when we're actually like 3.1 or something right now. So we see a lot of like using foreigners as an excuse here in Japan, also saying, it's the foreigners that make the trash, the foreigners that are noisy. And when we talk about like foreigners being noisy, I think it's funny because a lot of times Japanese are incredibly noisy. It's always about a time and a place when to do that. And I think when you listen to somebody speaking in a foreign language, you tend to think it's louder. For example, there was a group of Brazilians talking. Japanese would say, they're louder. But Japanese are pretty loud too. All people are pretty loud when they're not being considerate of other people's space or time or energy or whatever. But here you'll hear like, these foreigners are so loud, or their foreigners are so loud. But a lot of times it's not that. It's just the concept of listening to a different thing that you're not used to. For example, music or talking. I've been on the trains a half dozen times here in Japan, and a lot of times, you'll be like talking, or I'm traveling with foreigners together, and they'll be like, you guys are being really loud. Not always being like some people will be like microaggression, you're being too loud in Japan, and it's like really softly say something. But then they'll always be like, then there'll be those that are like jumping up and like, shut up, and complaining. And a lot of times it takes you by shock, because generally Japanese people are very reserved. Again, I'm saying reserved and not kind or polite, because I think we need to delve into that to understand a better concept of polite and kind in Japan. Japanese are very reserved because of the social pressure that they have that surrounds them. So being on the train, for example, anything that's different, for example, if you got like an older man being obnoxiously loud, people will ignore it. Nobody will say anything, and they'll just let that person be obnoxiously loud or annoying or whatever. Or if a person's sleeping on the train, people will ignore them. Japanese to Japanese, generally they'll ignore. But if they feel some kind of ability to be bullying or power, for example, if a young girl or a young guy's talking on the phone, somebody might start yelling at them. And they wouldn't like it vice versa, but they'll do it because they kind of want to assert their dominance, or they just really, have no life. And I think a lot of the people here, when it comes to interacting with foreigners, sometimes have their own miserable life. That's the same anywhere, but here you can see it more because there's a certain energy that's in Japan that most people don't talk about or think about, because when you visit here, you think it's peace or calmness versus what it really is. My son came back from Africa, and his biggest reverse culture shock was he mentioned to me that Japanese all look like zombies. I mean, they're bad posture, they're slouched over, they look tired all the time. And I said, Mijo, baby, I'm like, I've been telling you that for years, and I'm not saying it as a critique. I'm saying it as a perspective, as a way to look at things, right? For example, if you see fire, you're gonna go, hey, look, that's hot. And if you see people with this kind of energy, you gotta say, hey, look, recognize it, and either see if you can be a part of the betterment of it, or at least not let that energy become part of your life. And I'm happy to say that since he got back from Africa last week, my son listens more, and I'm like, stand up straight, and he stands up straight, and he, broadens out his shoulders, and he's a very handsome, like, just amazing young man. And a lot of these things come because of cultural, the ability to see other cultures and how they act, right? My son said it in Rwanda, everybody stands up with good posture. If not, you're looked down upon as very low class. And it's something that we don't really think about here. And a lot of times, like I said, Japanese people think Japanese people are polite and kind. And I want to go always back to my main thing. They didn't grow up in a Judeo-Christian culture. So the thing when we say kind in English is very different than when we say it in Japanese. Rege, for example, like, or yasashi. Yasashi is a little different, but like rege is like correct behavior. Like, you should do this, you shouldn't do that, right? And you'll see acts of kindness. And I'm not saying that Japanese don't have it because it's not a Judeo-Christian value that they don't have. All cultures have their own thing of kindness. It's about human connection, one to another. My son always used to say, like, when we would be walking upstairs or going somewhere, if I saw somebody like an elderly woman or man and they looked like they needed help up the stairs, I'd always stop while other people walked by. And I told my son, I said, hey, look, it's the right thing to do. And I hope one day somebody will do that for me or for mama. And I said, whether they do it or not, I mean, it's better than not doing it, right? And sorry, guys, the noise is just horrible here today. And it's important that we do our best, no matter what culture we're from or whatever we're doing, and that we're always able to contribute to life, right? Regardless of your faith, your bringing, your background, you're going to have a feeling of how you feel when you interact with other people. It doesn't matter what their nationality is or religion or sex, but like, for example, just as much as I would help a mother, carrying her baby car up the stairs at Gotanda Station, because everyone who knows Gotanda Station knows how hard that is when you have kids, especially my wife, because we had 3 and we had to go through there. But also like helping an older man if he drops something and like, oh, excuse me, these little things keep us as kind human beings. And I'm really happy that my kids and like the kids here at the Academia have an opportunity to see that. A lot of the parents were yesterday coming out of the haunted house with the kids, and they were like, it was amazing. I can't believe how much time you put into this. Some of the parents were like, wow, you must have put so much time into this. Yeah, we put about 10 hours into it. If I were to put a price tag on how much, including my time, and remember, I always joke about my time as an English teacher, because that's the most standard, like 1 hourly rate you're going to find here. For someone like me, if I stopped doing capoeira, I could teach English for about 3,000 yen an hour. So let's say with all the stuff that I bought, we're looking at about $1,000 just to create this haunted house event. And that's just a production. Because of you guys, all with Patreon is doing my time. I'm doing this extra stuff. It's a great event. Of course, there's great marketing value in it for me. But also, there are costs in everything. But the value of giving kids the opportunity to see other people involved in community things here, especially for Japanese who have a concept that foreigners come and they leave. Foreigners come and leave. All foreigners will eventually leave. But now they're seeing, some of the parents who have been around for like 10 years are like, wow, we're seeing how like everyone here, they wave to the foreigners that they know, even though they might not be on a like they've never met actually, but so many events they've like waved at each other, said hello. And these also help to broaden the minds of the parents. Now, we have to be very careful because the parents who bring their kids to my academia already know it's a foreigner teaching and my style, and people in the area know. So the people who come here, the parents who come here, are incredibly open-minded before they even walk through the door, because they want me as a foreign teacher to teach their kids, and I make it very clear how I do that. Tough love, discipline. I want the kids to create their own sense of confidence and character, but at the same time, I train them like they're going to be kids growing up in Brazil who want to be able to compete capoeira on an international level. I want to give that quality. But that's why we do everything that we do. But guys, having the ability to reflect and to be part of an international community here in Japan is super rare, actually. I always mention that a lot of times the foreigners who come here will get kind of weird. Not the foreigners like the Southeast Asians, because they already know how to build their communities here. Like, for example, there's a very strong Chinese community. There's a very strong Taiwanese community. There's a very strong Korean community. But you'll never get like there's a America neighborhood in like one area, or there's a British neighborhood in one area, because we tend to just come here and not be part of this kind of ethnic solidarity, because we come from very different ethnic backgrounds, coming from England, from the United States, Australia, and whatnot. So having the ability for these kids to be involved in the international and creating a sense of groundedness for the foreigners who are here, I really feel is important. And that's why we keep creating these cultural events. And there's a reason why I do it. Guys, thank you for joining me today. Episode 21. Mestre Vibes, Mestre Sukuri coming to you from Tokyo, Japan. Have a fantastic day. Lots of love, lots of peace, and lots of